On this day in history, May 9th, 1662, the figure who later became Mr. Punch makes his first recorded appearance in England. Included in the following is an excerpt from the 1944 edition of the Encyclopaedia Britannica going over the history of Punch. Punch, the abbreviated form of Puccinello, Italian Polichinella, the most popular of the puppets or marionettes, and the chief figure in the Punch and Judy show. It is of Italian origin, though its history is by no means free from obscurity. The early etymologists sought to trace the name to various mythological individuals, by whom it was alleged the type was first furnished. Father Galani adopts the theory, which derives it from the name of Puccio de Aniello, a vintager of Acerra, near Naples, who, having by his wit and grotesque appearance vanquished some strolling comedians in their own sphere, was induced to join the troupe, and whose place, by reason of his popularity, was supplied after his death by a masked actor who imitated his dress and manner. The claims of other individuals, Paolo Sinella, Policeno, and Pulcinella, a Neapolitan dealer in fowls, have also found supporters, and the derivation of the name and character from some old mystery representing Pontius, or in English, Pounce, French, Ponce. Pilate and Judas, or the Jews, was formerly popular. It has even been suggested that the title is a modification of the Greek meaning, I move much, as expressive of the restlessness which is characteristic of the puppet, and the assumption that the character was invariably of diminutive size has given rise to its reference to the word pollis, the thumb. The most plausible theory, however, regards the name in its Italian form as a diminutive of poccino, feminine of poccina, a chicken. It is sometimes stated that, in consequence of the habit of using the word chicken as a term of endearment, it came to mean a little child, and hence a puppet. The choice, however, seems to lie between the theory of Quadrio, that it was applied on account of the resemblance of the hooked nose to a beak, and that of J. Baretti, which ascribes its employment to the nasal squeak and timorous impotence of the original character. With respect to the development of the modern type, it has been assumed that the whole family of Italian maschere, Aralicino, Brighella, and the like, are modified survivals of the principal Oscan characters of the Atellania, and that Puccinello is the representative of Maccus, the fool or clown. In proof of this, it is urged that Acerra, the supposed residence of Puccio de Aniello, and the traditional source of the character, is in the neighborhood of Aversa, the old Atella, and reference is also made to the bronze statue of Maccus discovered at Rome in 1727, an engraving of which has been preserved in Faccaroni's Le Maschere Sanchez e la Figura Comique de Antonucci Romani. But the resemblance of the statue to the puppet is scarcely a striking one, and the large nose and deformed figure are somewhat hazardous ground on which to base the theory. Andrea Porrucci, 1699, and Gimma assert with some show of authority that Silvio Foriello, a comedian named after his principal part, Captain Matamoros, the Italian Miles Gloriosus, invented the Neapolitan Pulcinella. It was afterwards improved by Andrea Calchesi, surnamed Gioccio, who died of the plague in 1656, and who, according to Gimma, imitated in the character the peasants of Acerra. This would place the origin of the Italian Pulcinella somewhere about the commencement of the 17th century, the original character appearing to have been that of a country clown, hook-nosed, shrill-voiced, cowardly, boastful, and often stupid, yet given at times to knavish tricks and shrewd sayings. In through accordance with this date, we find that the earliest known appearance of Pulcinella in France is at the beginning of the reign of Louis XIV, in the show of the puppet-playing dentist Jean Baroche. The date of its introduction into England has been disputed, J. Payne Collier being of the opinion that Punch and King William came together, a second theory suggesting an earlier origin with the Huguenot refugees. It is more than probable that it crossed the Channel in the wake of the Royalists, apart from the general references by S. Pepys, 1662, and by J. Evelyn, 1667, to an Italian puppet show at Covent Garden. The former mentions 1669 of some poor people who called their fat child Punch, that word being become a word of common use for all that is thick and short, an allusion to Punchinellos, is also to be found in Butler's satire of English imitation of the French, and Aubrey speaks of a Punchinello holding a dial as one of the ornaments of Sir Samuel Lely's house at Whitehall. But though the puppet did not travel in the train of William of Orange, allusions to it became far more frequent after the Revolution of 1688, and the skill of the Dutch in their treatment of puppet mechanisms may have enhanced its attractiveness. In 1703 it was introduced at Bartholomew Fair into a puppet play of the creation of the world. In 1709 it was found in a representation of the deluge, though in a different part from that of Momus Pulcinella. And in 1710 it is mentioned as a leading figure in Powell's puppet show at Covent Garden. The alleged satire on Robert Walpole, entitled A Second Tale of a Tub, or The History of Robert Powell, the Puppet Showman, 1715, furnishes some details of Punch performances, and has an interesting frontispiece representing Powell with Punch and his wife. The Judy, or Joan, as she appears to have been sometimes called, is not of a specifically grotesque order, but the Punch is easily recognizable in all but the features, which are of the normal puppet type. The older Punchinello was far less restricted in his actions and circumstances than his modern successor. He fought with allegorical figures representing wanton weariness, as well as with his wife and with the police, was on intimate terms with the patriarchs and the 7 champions of Christendom, sat on the lap of the Queen of Sheba, had kings and dukes for his companions. Powell seems to have introduced a trained pig, which danced a minuet with Punch and the French, among whom Punch is now usually styled Guignol, originally a puppet hailing from Lyon. Occasionally employed a cat in the place of the dog Toby, whose origin is somewhat uncertain. A typical version of the modern play, with illustrations, was published by Payne Collier and Cruikshank in 1828.